contacts are blurry.
I got you.
Let me get on this real quick, make sure everything looks good. Online chat. Good. Very good on there. Chat. Oh, I was muted. Alright, let's see this way.
I'll put my webcam up in a little bit. I just got to reattach it.
We are now live. Yeah, everything's up. Alright, cool. What's up, Dragon Ball fam? It's your boy, Eddie St. Hilaire, coming at you with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 others in a Discord. Today, today's special topic will be a tier list we'll put together for you guys, along with an explanation. That was my introduction. We'll start from Giancarlo, Coombs, Sublett, Cam, and then Trey. By the way,
what's up?
This ice cream is really good, guys.
I believe it. Most ice cream is pretty good.
Sprinkles, man. My God.
Oh my goodness. What's up, Giancarlo? So actually, Cam already made a tier list, and we brought him on to discuss his tier list and then the opinions that he has, because him and his team worked on it. So when he introduces himself, he'll talk a little bit more about that. Anyway, otherwise, I'm Giancarlo. I'll pass it over to Coombs.
I am the Matthew Coombs, the Scrub Fam, kicking it to you live from PPG/FOE podcasting shenanigans. It's going to be a good time. We're going to talk about some stuff. I'm going to give you some bad takes. Don't listen to me too much.
Sublett is muted. Nope. Okay.
Sorry, the dog was barking.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
That works. Cam?
Elegant.
Hey everybody, my name's Cam. I'm from the Card Guys. And yeah, these they asked me to come along, talk about the tier list that we made. It seemed that it gained a lot of traction within the discussion group, and a lot of people had an opinion about it. So when we get to that point, I'll kind of go in depth a little bit, think about the parameters that were used in regards to making the tier list and what they necessarily mean to us and why we put certain decks where.
It's your boy, Trey. I'm back here with more bad takes about multicolored decks that I love and adore.
Thanks.
This guy's trying to make Surge. I ain't gonna lie, Trey. The one, I'm trying to think, multicolored deck, there's probably 3 of them, right? You have Invoker, you have Cell Surge. He's gonna say Cooler. Damn, I lost my train of thought. What was the third one I was going with this? Oh, man. Android. No, Android. Android 16. In all seriousness, Android 16 is a real deck, man.
Yeah, Android 16 is fine.
It's for real a good deck, man. I'm surprised you haven't tested the waters on that one, because it is blue, and I know you like blue. But, yeah. So, I think before we even get into this discussion, we should go into the basics, right? So, we should go into
I think before we get into discussion, I got something to say.
What's up? Go ahead.
Okay. What was I gonna say? On the fucking excuse me. my bad. On the video you uploaded of me versus Duval. Bro, honestly, bro, sometimes this community is so damn annoying. Yeah, a bunch of people call me a cheater. I activated a Paragus super combo and then I didn't warp for it. That's my bad. That's a human mistake, right? It should piss me off so bad. There was like 4 different people who commented, and like just people talking, bro. I don't know why it made me so mad, but like, anyway, people make mistakes. When we were commentating, the Twitch chat was cheater this, cheater that, because Duval and Jonathan were like very relaxed. They were taking back plays. Like this was the most relaxed top 8, top 4 finals Like this was literally one of the more relaxed tournaments you could have had. So like,
There were 28 people there.
there were 28 people, bro. I played a set one deck with a 10 card sideboard. Like clearly no, like we're not going super try hard. You know what I mean? So anyway, like when somebody makes a mistake like that, don't comment, "Oh, the green Broly player got caught cheating." That is not at all what happened. Like literally, I just made a mistake. Now, if I had won that game, I would have felt bad. But I didn't win because I'm not that good. So fuck it, whatever. So whatever. If you call me a cheater, you're a bitch. That's really all I have to say about that.
Going on to the
And
next one. Going
moving
on to
on.
going on to the next one. So on that note, guys, I will tell you guys this. And stuff like this, right? It's life in general, right? It's not just Dragon Ball. It's people will always come to you with negativity. My best way to describe it, and this is what I used to tell my soldiers, right? If you don't have haters, you're not doing something correctly. Because as long as you're successful, you'll always have those people who are trying to find the flaws in your game, just trying to get to you, man. Like you'll see all these famous people, they're always like on the news, Sports Center, just regular famous people, right? People are always trying to. What in the world just happened here?
That's the tier list. I'm just you can click, you can watch it. That way the stream
But
can watch the tier list.
yeah. But people just people will always try to find a chink in your armor to get a response for them. Now, if they're able to trigger said response, if I would have knew this is where this was going, I would have just said don't say anything because they win, and then you have what they call as modern day trolls will keep trolling you. So yeah, all the negativity.
No, I win. I have the platform. I have the platform to say when I won, I win.
As many of you guys love me, trust me when I say I get as many bad comments as I do good comments. So, but at the same time, you don't ever see me like you don't ever see that change my character. I act in a way like I want to present and I want my people to follow me. So that when things happen to them, they can say, okay, cool, this is how you improvise, adapt, and overcome. You just ignore the shows and keep doing what you're doing. The only thing you got to prove in this world is to yourself. That's it. You don't owe anyone anything, man. But with that being said,
hey, I respect what you just said, but we're different people, and I'm never not gonna approach someone like that who approached me like that. So anyway, but yes, we can move on.
With that being said, before we get into the tier, I think people's biggest issues with tiers is that they see these things, right? And people get so gun ho and stuck on the fact that they love certain leaders. And when they don't see said leaders in a specific category, they're like, well, this sucks. This is just it's fake, it's wrong, it's this. But the things they don't factor into it is you may have success with X leader at certain locals, but then if you ever have the opportunity to go shine, you don't attend the opportunity. So if you don't attend that opportunity, you're missing out on your chance to make your said leader where it's supposed to be. If you guys catch my drift. And to go on besides that point, it's these are all opinions, guys. Like everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't see how people can honestly get offended by someone's opinion. Like I said, you don't have to agree with everyone's opinions, but guys, these are people's opinions. Like it's not like, oh snap, what they say, it's this. Like, okay, cool. If I say this deck is tier 0, that doesn't mean if you don't play that deck, you're gonna lose. Like it could be wrong. Like it just may be my favorite deck, and I'm saying it's tier 0. You see what I'm saying? Like, don't get mad over someone's opinion. You're entitled to your own opinion. No one's ever right and wrong in these discussions, man. It's literally a discussion. The way you keep it going on is by challenging them. Just ask them, okay, cool. So what happens when X goes against Z? Like, what changes on that? Is it the same? Pick their mind and pick their brain. See why they made that choice. Don't just try to fight, guys, man. Trust me. It's gonna be a long, drawn out battle, and there's gonna be no winners at the end. Because at the end of the day, it's not, you're not getting money for this. It's not like, okay, Bandai says if you're right, you're gonna win $1 million. Like no one's ever right because it's all opinions. Bandai could care less about what you think is tier 1 or tier 0. Honestly, they'll just address it on their ban list and say, well, this is what you're gonna play now, guys. So that's why I don't see why people get stuck up on all these tiers. Like I said, it's all for fun and games. Just don't let people get to you. It's all for fun and games, guys. And don't get offended. If you don't pick your leader, don't get offended, guys. We're just trying to project what we see will be meta relevant in upcoming events. Something that you can be surprised about. Because, like, honestly speaking, if you go to an event and you see Gogeta Zeno wins the event And you're like, well, it wasn't on their tier list. They're stupid and stuff like that. It's like, no, we didn't expect to see that. Like the stuff we expect to see is the stuff that we're gonna talk about. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, realistically, also, there's just too many decks to list.
Yeah.
Like Dragon, like like this. I'm just gonna use Set One Broly as an example.
Mhm.
I'm not putting Set One Broly on no tier list nowhere. But the reality is, it's like a fine deck. Like you said, Gogeta Xeno. I'm not putting that on a tier list. But the reality is like that's an okay fine deck. You see decks that like there's too many decks for us to possibly list every single leader and every single deck that could possibly top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a fun disclaimer. So why don't we actually move into the topic? Eddie, if you want to click on that watch stream button there, and everybody will be able to see the tier list. So go ahead and do that.
I like the way.
And
Go ahead, Solo.
And then with this then when this list pops up, Cam, before we actually go into any detail on what you put where, can you explain to us how you define the divides? Like what made you say that this is what we consider tier 1, this is what we consider tier 1.5, that kind of thing? Can you go into some detail into the construction of this list, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I pulled up our original Google Doc because obviously I cropped it to kind of like be more appealing to the discussion group because there was a lot of like extra stuff that we were kind of like what we were going for. So what we have here that says classifies as a good deck is 5 actual measures. One of them is playability. The second one is countered / matchups, saying like what are the matchups like and what decks counter it. The third is consistency. The fourth is explosiveness. And the fifth is the ceiling. And we mean ceiling as in a skill ceiling. It's how easy someone could pick up the deck, learn the lines a little bit, and then take it to an event. Some decks like how people used to think Janemba was a brain dead, where you could just walk into an event and you just negate, and you move on with your life. So that has a very low skill ceiling, but the deck was still able to perform very well. Then you get decks that say, I believe, have a little more intricate play lines. For example, like Mecha Frieza. For someone to pick up Mecha Frieza and try to really perfect the play lines, it's going to take a little bit longer because the deck has a little bit more intricacies to it. Those are the big 5 that we looked at. And from there, we played around with tier 1, 2, and 3. We were able to put a tier 1.5 because we believe that these are decks that were able to take games off of tier 1, take games off of tier 2, but it was just too flip-floppy. We couldn't confidently put them in tier 1 or tier 2.
Okay. Those are quite interesting metrics. How did you exactly define a deck's particular metric? Was it a scale of 1 to 5? Like, obviously, this is all opinion-based, and it's all subjective. But like for example, your list has Dark Broly on it right here. Did you say for that to be tier 1, it had like 5 out of 5 stars on each of your 5 metrics? Are we looking at like a 4 out of 5 stars? Was there some evenness, some balance? Can you go into a little more detail as to how you assigned those metrics to each of these decks?
We looked at it as how my personal parameter was if it hit like 3 of the 5 topics well, and we were able to able to say it has good playability, it's countered by very little, and it has a low skill ceiling. That's like to me what would be considered a tier 2 deck, where it's like, you're kind of hitting 3 out of 5. You can kind of make a good discussion for either or. Once you get into talking about 4 and 5 and being able to hit all 4 out of 5 and 5 out of 5, then that's what we would start considering. Hey, look, this deck could actually be like a tier 1 deck.
Okay. Did you ever consider anything like accessibility when you were looking
Accessibility in this game is actually very hard.
Yes. Also representation. Did you ever look into say this many go into a tournament and this many come out on top? Did you consider that as a metric?
It's difficult because, like, let me put it this way. When you look at like accessibility in this game, we know that there's a TP problem, and a lot of these decks do enter with a lot of TPs, unfortunately, and obviously too the secret rare. I call it the secret rare dilemma, where a lot of secret rares are very expensive. Only you need one, but still. So that we kind of have to put that on the back burner because when we're discussing it, we're not discussing it based on how many people are going to play it, what's going to be this, what's going to be that. We looked at pure mechanics wise. We looked at the understanding of the consistency of the deck via the 50 to 60 cards, and then go from there. If we were to factor in the price of cards, then I honestly don't think it really becomes a tier list. It just becomes like, hey, throw your wallet at the screen and buy the cards you need. And that's not going to be fair to people. This gives people a decent idea that if you want to test for a meta, if you want to try and borrow cards, do it. You can go and untap, take any with the tier 1 decks, and really think that, okay, if this deck's being considered tier 1, I can learn the play lines a little bit better. That's why we have untap, so we can learn decks and play lines without having to physically buy the cards.
Right, that makes sense. When I brought up accessibility, I actually meant in terms of, are you using like real tournament data to build this tier list, or is this all completely theoretical? And that's where I meant by accessibility. Like King Vegeta, for example, is not very accessible right now for the very reason that you said, tournament promos. It's the Red Broly phenomenon at the start of set 11, whatever in God's name set Red Broly came out of. And so that's kind of what I was getting at. Are these theoretical based, or are these like results based?
So it's one of those things where we decided that, because as a team, obviously the card guys, gamers, and G Sports, we like to kind of test when we can. We'll test in webcam, because obviously having the physical deck is something that you're more willing to be playing.
Mm-hmm.
However, we also did take into fact that we usually use untap a lot to take these opportunities to learn these different decks. So this was based off of our playtesting, theory crafting, general knowledge of the metagame going into the last two sets, going into this one, what was released, what kind of cards were being introduced into the meta, what kind of strategies were going to be introduced in the meta, and kind of just this took a lot of brainstorming, because when Butters and I launched the original list, I was kind of just him and I going back and forth. A lot of us got together afterwards. Dahan, Ben, Craig, Simon, a lot of us just really then went really into it. I mean, Jason participated in it too. Jerry participated as well. Like, everyone got in on it at some point or another, so that everyone's opinion was taken into account. So we could come into this knowing that, look, we all talk to each other. We all have different perspectives, and we were still able to agree on this.
Okay. Would you consider this tier list all-inclusive in the sense that it works for best of 1 and best of 3? Or do you think this is more of a best of 3? You think this is more of a best of 1? Or did you kind of factor... This is a best of 3 tier list. Okay, all right. That also...
Best of 1 becomes such a lawless wasteland of what can actually win and not, because... for example, I'm going to shout out Legends here. That guy plays Invoker religiously in Best of 3, but I've seen him also play Android 18 in Best of 1. Now, I never will say that Android 18 is going to be a really good Best of 3 deck, because it's a very niche and understood. It's a very it's like a gotcha deck. It's not going to actually do really well, but for him, who understands the deck very well, that's going to be something in Best of 1. That gotcha deck, that's all you need. You just need to have that major turn and then consider going forward. There's a lot of different decks that come out in Best of 1 that I don't think survive in Best of 3. Well, we don't think that survives in Best of 3.
Okay, well, it's just important for this frame of reference for the audience here to understand that this tier list is just Best of 3. Okay. So with that, and sorry if any of these questions are a bit too complicated.
You always ask the best questions, man. It's pretty funny.
We came into it knowing that we're going to get a lot of questions from the other teams, because generally speaking, when a team or an org comes out with a meta or like an assumed meta, you're going to have the people say, as yourselves, MRG, Topo Loco, a lot of those guys, University, they were going to come out and start talking and be like, all right, so do we match up with this? Do we agree? Do we disagree? Where can we have this as constructive conversation? And generally what I'm seeing, based off of what we've been talking about and what interactions have been on socials, we're actually almost right in the same area. We're all in that same ballpark, necessarily, maybe give or take 1 or 2.
Okay. That is all very good to know. And we're also going to have some, disagreements as far as this deck is good versus not based on our own experiences, whether you're a results-oriented person or a theory-oriented person or that kind of thing. So it is, as Eddie said in the disclaimer, very important for the audience to understand this is all a matter of opinion. And I personally think that Invoker tier 0, but moving past that. Okay, so let's actually approach the tier list now, and let's look at tier 1. Now, in tier 1, you have...
Can I say one thing? Real quick. So, I like the Richard Zapp metric of tier list, which is tier 1, this deck will win a... So, okay, preface that. This is how I'm going to be judging decks, like, when I talk about a tier list. So, tier 1, tier 0 doesn't exist right now. Cool. Good. Hopefully, Mech Frieza doesn't become tier 0. It won't, but anyway. Tier 1 will win an event, no questions asked. Like, any tier 1 deck has to have the obvious potential to win an event. Tier 2 will top an event, no problem. Like any person who's good, who is playing a tier 2 deck, will be able to top an event. Tier 3, maybe. And then anything else is like just generally not worth mentioning, or you throw it in the rogue category. That's like the Zap metric, and he posted that a long time ago in whatever freaking set 5 or whatever. And I think that's the best way to go about tier list. But I'm just saying that is how I'm going to be looking at tier list, including this one.
So I'm going to chime in before we go into the next segment. So I can I'm glad you brought that up, Giancarlo. But so for instance, myself, when I do not like tier lists in any sort of frame of reference. I usually try and define things into what decks are defining the format right now when it comes to our rules of engagement of how we have to engage in the format, and then what decks can compete with those decks at a certain level, and then of course what decks are just going to compete with those decks. So it kind of goes in a level 1, level 2, level 3 style, and then it's all about just what's going to cause the format to turn over, and then where we can pick that spot in the metagame to make that turnover happen, whether it be something that we introduce via deck or something like that. So tier list wise, if I have to say tier 1, I'm going to be looking at decks that define the format as we start in the early weeks.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Coombs said, except I'll take a little step further. When I see it, a tier list, I see just there's this one top list of cards, right? That particular deck or decks just do what they can do, and you cannot stop. It says, this is what I'm going to do. Now you have to stop me. Now, based off of that deck or decks, other decks come and say, okay, cool. This is what I have, and this is what I can do to mitigate what you're trying to do. And that's why, like, it's just like how you were saying, tier lists to me are really irrelevant because you'll only have probably a handful of decks that you could just say, no matter what deck I sit in front of, you're not going to stop what I'm doing. And then from there, you'll spawn everything else. But yeah.
Preface this that where the inspiration came up for this was basically for us in regards to when we do adjustments, and if we start working on kind of like spicy brews and all that stuff, is how are we building our sideboards? Believe it or not, that's how this conversation came up, is what decks do we need to focus our sideboard cards around, and when those sideboard cards are played, what other decks do they also hit? For example, we like a lot of our talks end up being about like Kotsukai. Kotsukai is a deck that can hit one pretty hard, but also hits maybe two others pretty well. And then the idea just kept rolling and rolling. So instead of being about figuring out how to perfect a sideboard, which is a topic we want to discuss probably in another in some other content, but it went from how to build our sideboards to, oh, wait a minute, we can actually just rank a meta based off of our knowledge and testing and then see how other people react to it.
I think I need to learn how to build a sideboard. That's my biggest weakness as a player, without a doubt.
Here's one thing I will say about myself is, and we'll have to work on this together, building sideboards and tuning a 65 and finding exactly what you're going to want in a certain matchup, what to take in, what to take out. Man, that is my favorite thing about deck building.
That's mine too.
Yeah, I like Snake Smart Silver Bullets.
Side decking's so easy. Just side deck one the Rampaging Heart. It works every time for me.
Yeah, but Let's get into this,
All right,
man.
before we continue, I have one last point to say, and it's that a tier list is just something we do, right? It's content, kind of like when ban list season comes up and everybody makes ban list predictions and everything. It's just kind of something to do with your buddies and to talk about and to argue about, and it's a fun thing. Whether you like tier lists or not, oh well, we have one here, and so we'll focus on this one. So now, moving in to the actual tier list, tier one. So you've put Dark Broly, Mecha Frieza, King Piccolo, both variants of King Vegeta, and King Cold as your tier ones. Now, we don't need to discuss Mecha Frieza being a tier one deck. I don't think there's a single person in the game right now who would argue that Mecha Frieza is not one of the best decks that we have available. It has a wonderful spread. It has access to literally all of the tools you could possibly imagine. Do you need a board wipe? Here's a Unison that's a board wipe, or this Overrun that's a board wipe. Do you need to stop your opponent from winning the game? Here's half your deck. Stop them. There's no question there. And I don't think there's any question about King Piccolo's placement on this list either. It's got the defense, it's got the offense, it's got everything it needs to be a top contender for sure. However, I believe that the other three offer sources of contention and are a good place for our discussion here. So Cam, let's start with this Dark Broly. And as we go through these, I think it's important to keep it brief. We don't want to all six of us discuss each single deck that's on this list as we go through. So I'll set it up. Cam, you knock it down, and then if anybody has a quick comment as we move on, then I think that's the best way to go about this. So for Dark Broly, we see from the tournaments, and again, I'm results oriented, so I'm going to bring up constantly results that we see in the tournaments here. We see Dark Broly is very hit or miss. It doesn't generally exist as a guarantee in the top. It certainly doesn't exist as a guarantee in the win. The side deck is very hard on Dark Broly. The fact that if we look at your tier list, there are two other red decks is extremely hard on Dark Broly because Violent Rays shuts that deck down completely. Why? What makes you think that Dark Broly deserves this spot?
So I'm gonna talk about those 5 points I mentioned before. We kind of came into this seeing like the big bad three were Dark Broly, Mecha Frieza, and King Piccolo. Dark Broly because I believe black as a color did get a huge boost from the Gogeta promo. That I think that's just no point for contention. That card is an insanely good card, and being able to consistently pump out 30Ks on turn 1 and 2 with very game altering effects from Dark Broly is still a very hard play style to deal with, and because it is one of those black decks, I think that kind of plays into its own consistency. That's where we start getting into those like parameters we talked about. Playability. I think someone could pick up Dark Broly, spend a few hours in testing, and understand the basic play lines, and be able to do very well in an event. Countered in matchups. I think Dark Broly has good matchups. I know that Red obviously is a harder matchup because of Violent Rays, but I still think that Dark Broly can punch through more and more, especially being able to have the backup of Brainwash to kind of be its own security blanket. It has very good consistency. It can be very explosive, and I think it has like a mid-tier skill ceiling. As I said, someone can take it, learn a little bit more of the play lines, go to an event after taking it the night before and play testing and do okay. Someone takes a little more time and learns it. I think then they'll perform much better. For example, one person I think that's actually very good at Dark Broly is Marquise. I think Marquise is actually really good at Dark Broly. Watching him play it, that's someone I think really highlights how the deck can be played.
Absolutely, he needs to not charge his negates against
I was thinking about that. I wasn't gonna say it, but I was thinking it. I think Dark Broly deserves, like, it's been around longer than like any of these other decks in the tier 1 that Cam put. It's like earned its place in the tier 1 slot, and then if we continue to see little to no results from it, it just kind of slumps down. Like, you can build the deck literally however you want it. You have a million good sideboard options. The problem with Dark Broly is like it completely fell off in best of 1. because that deck really struggles in best of one. It's almost half bad. It's like half bad in best of one, and then like it's just again like Cam said, like right now people who aren't me don't have their Gogeta TPs because I have mine, so that's cool. Like it's just the deck will come back. Like it's due. I think it has fine matchups against King Vegeta, King Cold. Like Mecha Frieza is pretty okay. Like it has good matchups across the board. It deserves a tier 1 spot.
I think it's one of those decks that's contextually good, and that's why I don't think it's tier 1. I think it's based on the rest of the format and what's going on around it, whereas I think Mecha Frieza and King Piccolo always do exactly what they want to do and are not just contextually good, they're always good.
Funny,
So
I'll
very-
bring it up.
interesting
King Piccolo is the only deck that has stagnated completely. King Piccolo has not gotten any new cards or strategies from the new set, and it's completely stagnated. So realistically, a deck that will fall from the tier 1 slot, or at least the deck that has the most potential to fall, is King Piccolo, because it has completely stagnated compared to every other deck on this tier list, who is or every other deck in the tier 1 slot that has continued to get support.
Okay. Cam, do you have any rebuttals to any of the things that they said before we move on to the next point?
I think Coombs does have an. I understand his concept talking about contextually. When you look at the deck and pick, if someone were to say, "Oh, I'm playing Dark Broly," you're gonna sit there and be like, "Oh, I know that deck's good. I know that deck can top." And I am very interested to see how Dark Broly does fare going deeper into Set 13 meta and what it has to do to adapt. I mean, I think that it will still stick along those lines that it has it has good explosiveness, it has decent consistency, and it has some, it has that mid skill ceiling to where you could still learn from it. However, I do see where he is coming from with it contextually. Like, when you hear Dark Broly, you do necessarily think that, okay, that's a tier 1 deck.
I don't think it's contextually good. I think it's just all around good. In best of 3, I think that's the biggest difference. You saw King Piccolo and Mecha. You saw the success in best of 1, and you didn't see that for Dark Broly, so people think the deck fell out. But in a best of 3 format, Dark Broly literally has answers to everything. I understand people will say, hey, Violent Rays kills the deck. It doesn't kill the deck. Violent Rays loses you the game, because what's going to happen is you start to lose cards fast, very, very fast. The only red card that just literally says your turn is done, that's it. No matter what you do, it's just over, is the Vegeta Unison. Shout out to my boy Travis Washburn for introducing that one to the masses. That card is the only red card that when you play it, it's like, well, damn, yeah, I actually do gotta skip my turn. But yeah, I'll just leave it like that.
Violent Rays is a neg 2 that cuts your attacks in half. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah,
We're not going to argue about Dark Broly, guys. We're gonna move on for time issues because we got a bunch of things. Let's try and stay on top.
No.
So, shut up, Chesko. All right. So the next one on here is the King Vegeta deck, right? And you've put both variants in the same footing, which I think is very interesting in and of itself. But let's ignore the variation between the red green and the mono red. Let's just look at it as far as the package, the engine that the deck itself plays regardless. So King Vegeta, as the deck that it is designed to be, regardless of the lifting power that you put with the deck, be it Jiren and going at your face, or be it Eradicator and going at your face. King Vegeta is a very interesting deck. It kind of fights in the red slot against King Piccolo as which one is the better choice for the deck. They kind of occupy a very similar space in this mid-range area, but King Piccolo is that mid-range defense, while King Vegeta is that mid-range offense. And so I have two questions for this one, because it's still new and we don't have many King Vegeta results. Do you think moving forward that you will keep King Vegeta in this slot? And do you think moving forward that one of the two red decks that you currently have on tier 1 will fall off because the other one just ends up being the better one? And if so, which one?
So let's talk about the former. I think that if you would look at King Vegeta going into the set, I think the red-green variant will continue to do well, and I think that the mono-red variant will kind of fall off. We kind of put both.
I disagree. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, red green is the worst version.
Consistency is 100% with mono red. But go ahead.
No. I know the consistency. So I know the consistency with mono red. is there. So I don't play a lot of red. That's Travis. Travis plays a lot of red. He is if I have to ask what a red card does, the kid has it in his mind ready to go. But so he's the one who we were going to with King Vegeta, kind of be like, hey, so what are the topics of contention? He is big on the mono red. I like the red green because I think it's a little more hyper aggressive. But I see the sides of both. I think what's going to happen is, what's going to happen is that, say this is red green. Red green's going to come up because it's hyper aggressive, and a lot of people do like playing that hyper aggressive deck. That's going to gain a lot of favorability among people who kind of want to have that low skill ceiling style of deck. When you play a hyper aggressive deck, you just kind of want to go and go and go in. But I think mono red's going to come up a little more after the favorability of red green kind of dips, because mono red has more consistency. It has more of that. While there's a lot more lines, I believe, that deck is a lot more consistent than the red green variant. And I actually, if going into your next question, I actually don't believe that either of these red decks are going to fall off. Reason being is that, because you said it perfectly, they're both mid-range decks, but then they cater to someone's specific niche. Do you like playing mid-range and being more defensive? Play King Piccolo. Do you like playing mid-range but be a little more offensive? Play King Vegeta. Do you want to play red but have to buy a ton of promos? Buy both decks.
It's fair. All right, Chesko, you wanted to say that he was wrong.
No. I mean, yes. No, I mean, I don't know. I think the red version's better. Red green is like a hyper aggro deck that can't kill. Like, Cam, you literally played against it 10 minutes ago, and he literally could not kill you. You see what I'm saying? Like, it was impossible for you to lose that game. So it is a hyper aggro deck that loses to one negate. So I don't think the deck's actually that good. It's not an issue of consistency, because you always have Eradicator. You play 8 copies of Eradicator and you draw 1,000,000 cards. It's not an issue of consistency. It's an issue of ceiling. The deck's ceiling is not high enough to kill you on turn 2 or even turn 3. Like, about half the time. If you have 1 negate, you're not losing an Eradicator. That's really all it comes down to.
Yeah, I ended up finding out who I was playing against, and your original assessment were right. It was Ryan Connolly from Topo Loco.
Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and we were like kind of going, because he said that my hand was absolute gas playing Vegex, and
your hand was an average Regex hand. You played 2 cards. He played 5 cards in 1 turn and got 6 attacks. You see what I'm saying? You played 2 cards. In those 5 cards, he could not kill you, and those 2 cards, you just won the game. So it's a hyper aggressive deck that cannot win. So it's just not a deck that's ever gonna win anything relevant. Now, if you talk about results, King Vegeta won PPG in Miami. Mono Red King Vegeta got 2nd place at some random online event, and then Red Green King Vegeta got top 8 at some other event. So it's like, the deck is tier 1. It's winning and it's topping. There were 3 events this weekend. All 3 events had a King Vegeta King Vegeta representation. Without a doubt, both versions right now probably tier 1. I just think Red Green's a little worse. That's all I'm saying.
Also, to Ryan, if you listen to this, you played well. This isn't bashing you.
No. It's just how the deck was. Cam also did have double power burst, so whatever. Anyway, moving on.
Triple. I drew into one.
Oh, you're triple power burst. Excuse me. Go ahead.
So that is quite interesting. And actually, unless anybody else has another point they want to make, I have a comment on King Vegeta, King Vegeta that leads into King Cold.
Go ahead.
Somebody? Okay. So
I was just gonna say, King Vegeta offers the I just wanted to chime on this one thing. King Vegeta offers that unique, I guess, that ideal of you're gonna be at 4 life regardless of whether you like it or not, man. And that's something a deck, if you can do that and just find a way to exploit it, like how Andrew did, that's something that could be really, really scary in the future. But yeah, that's all I want to point out on. Go ahead, Sublett.
So the point that I'm going to point out about King Vegeta, my personal opinion of it is, I don't believe we've actually seen the best version. This is week 1, essentially, right? Like week 1, week 2, it's week 1. And I don't believe we've seen the best version. I think the best version is yet to come, because it's still too early to tell. And I believe that version is probably going to kick out Red-Green. I think Red-Green is the easiest to counter, which means that it is the worst version.
So what I can say about what you're talking about, right? Finding the best version of the deck. and it being mono red, I think the version of the deck that can be aggressive to the point that it wins the game just by leaning on the opponent. So basically, have a really explosive first 2 turns, and then just leaning on the opponent the rest of the game because you're just going to run the opponent out of resources, and then just killing them in the end and just taking full control of the game. And I think the best way to do that is introducing Heartfelt Plea, which I know we're all working on. So
Yes. Yes. I agree with that. I think you put the 1-drop Goku in there, and you get a nice, cute, heartfelt plea on 3 with Jiren. But yeah. Anyway, though, I think that we haven't seen that version yet because it's too new. It's too early. And you have King Cold on here, and I think that it's
Right.
also really early to call King Cold either a tier 1 deck or a tier 2 deck or anything, especially because King Cold did not show us the results that King Vegeta did. And so I think it's quite interesting that King Cold exists right here at the bottom of your tier list. Now, I played against a King
King
Cold
Cold.
deck. I played
So King Cold won a
Rio
regional.
King Cold deck. What?
the Asia regional.
Yeah, King Cold won a regional.
There's a regional in Asia? Okay, anyway.
I understand that NA is the best region, but it still won a regional.
Well, regardless, it's still very new. It didn't show results over here as well. How about that? And I think that I played against it. I saw what it can do. It was piloted by Justin Rios, so that we can't really argue one of the best players in the game. And it's a very good deck, but I'm quite curious what makes you think it's tier 1. Whether I agree or disagree doesn't matter on this one. You're the one who developed the list. Your team's the one who developed the list. So what are you thinking behind
100%
why
Butters.
this is? What is your thinking behind why this is tier 1? Is the answer Butters?
So Butters.
Yeah.
Yeah, Butters is the one that's been harping on this deck. Like, let's be real here. But we did have a very good discussion about it because I'm also testing with King Cold as well. I actually think one outside of those 5 qualifications for a tier deck, the deck concept is very new and very interesting. So of course it gravitated to me because that's a concept of where we can work on. I think being able to play multiple fields is a really, really cool thing with all of them having effects like an ETB or it leaves the battlefield. Very, very cool. However, the reason why we believe it is tier 1 is because we think that, to follow up on your point, that it is a deck with very good potential. Now, a lot of this is theory based because a lot of it was theory and testing within our own niche, as well as we did see that it did win the Asia regional. But the deck is one of those. It feels like a control deck, but it's not. It feels like it's hyper aggressive, but it's not because there are some turns where you give your leader double strike and you go in and you start chipping away. The point is, I feel like with the field spells, you're kind of to outvalue your opponent. You're trying to purposely outvalue them turn by turn. So it's not a. Oh, I'm super hyper aggressive. It's okay, that was your turn. All right, okay. What? I'm outvaluing you on my turn. I think that what we were able to do with Butters' list, which we do have up on YouTube, he did post it to the Gamers YouTube channel, so you have the full in-deck profile. If you want to go check that out, shameless plug. That he kind of starts discussing the card choices, and that right there, we believe is the base. That is the base in which we're going to build upon. The deck just has some very intricate and interesting lines to play, and having access to green is, I think, giving that deck so much more of a bump because green does have some good tools. It's just been a very lackluster color, especially recently. And being able to, say, okay, double strike the leader or triple strike with my unison. Okay, never mind. I'm going to play a Frieza charismatic and try to, slow down the turn a little bit. It just can pivot so many different ways. It's very, very cool. As the meta progresses, we're going to see how King Cold is because we're going to consistently test. But we just honestly believe that it is a tier 1 contender, that it can stick with the big boys, but we put it on the bottom because it's one of those where we're kind of like, we're giving it a little hope because we are invested in the concept behind it and building it into the deck it can be, but we do think that it's just getting there.
Okay, so you think it deserves like an asterisk, kind of like a tier 1.
Any set 13 leader on this list, like Bojack, King Vegeta, King Cold, Mecha Gabora down at the very, very bottom, Yellow Gohan in tier 3, all deserves an asterisk because with it beginning of a set, and a lot of it is basically theory crafting. Sure, we have little events that trickle out here and there, and you can see what does well, but you're not going to really see results and statistics and data until later on as the meta progresses. So it all has asterisks next to them.
Okay. And just to bring up a note on that, the value oriented green by design is typically mid range. Mid range seeks to outvalue the opponent.
Yep.
It seeks to win games with 3 drops, 4 drops. It has a nifty Abuni and everything. The problem that King Cold seems to suffer from is that its effects are all. It's good effects. It's really good effects are all like activate main. Even though their battle cards have deflect, they don't actually do anything. And so when you have King Cold versus Green, Charismatic Villain just comes down and destroys your whole day, which is a problem that I feel like might continue to hold that deck back. Because, like for example, that 3-drop Frieza that I showed, he's the 5-drop that reduces to 3. Card's amazing, but most of the time you're afraid to turn it sideways and then use its effect to get full value because something can happen to it when it turns sideways. It doesn't have barrier, and that is a card. Yes, Coombs. Like there are all these factors that kind of make me personally feel like it's more of a tier 2 contender than it is a tier 1. I think over time we're going to see that unless the tier 1 decks kind of just lose to Charismatic Villain. I think that King Cold's place in tier 1 is extremely contextually dependent.
Yes, and as I mentioned, it is because there's not a lot of there's a lot of testing for us in our play groups and everything. However, we're only just getting little events, and it's one of those things where we honestly believe that after testing contextually, and now I'm not going to say one result is the best result, the deck's tier 1, everything sucks, game over. But now seeing that, okay, it did pop up a little bit. So there's like a little blip on the radar. So now you might see that going forward, people might be testing it a little more. You know what I mean? I think honestly too, getting it out there and people seeing the deck and being able to play with it, because it was kind of looked under as a leader going into set 13. I see where you're coming from, though. I think you do have a lot of validity to what you're saying. I think that when you look at things contextually, it's very awkward because there's a lot of gray area.
Coombs, you held up the Bane of Invoker's existence, that Unison killed Vegeta card. Did you have something on the table? Yeah, that jerk.
So, playtesting King Cold myself, because I like to at least build and play with all the decks to learn all the decks. So I do a lot of gold fishing myself, and a lot of times just trying to solve problems that decks have. And the thing that I noticed about King Vegeta was, like you were saying, win conditions are susceptible to normal removal, right? And then additionally, the deck just doesn't have that ability to either close the game out with a giant punch or close the game out through doing something really powerful. And so I'm testing right now the AOD Unison in the deck to try and alleviate those problems, because if you just have turn 4, drop him, double strike crit, go into turn 5, you can -5 to be able to whittle your opponent's hand down and try and go for a game with your threats on board, and then leverage the Boo SCR if you're trying to swing with one of your big double strikers or triple strikers. Then I feel like you can kind of solve those problems. But that was my biggest thing when playtesting the deck, was I felt like I wish I was Invoker so bad, because you have all the tools to just stop your opponent from doing things between Dormant, Royal Supremacy, Frieza Charismatic Villain. You have such a great way to interact with your opponent, but you just don't have that huge surefire win condition. So I'm just trying to find that right now.
All right, so let's move forward now. We're leaving tier 1, and we have this magical thing called a tier 1.5. Now, we often see these on tier lists, and whether or not it exists completely depends on who you talk to, right? You could argue that anything on a tier 1.5 list should just be tier 2. Why are we bothering with a tier 1.5? you could argue that tier 1.5 decks kind of, and this is my own opinion, tier 1.5 is more like what I would consider an anti-meta deck. It's a deck designed to destroy tier 1. And if it doesn't go against tier 1, it just loses, right? It's not as spectacular. And so you get like an anti-meta deck. And I see you have Vegex on the list, which I have constantly called an anti-meta deck. Um, so this is interesting, and you've got actual explanations beside them. And so we see Vegex and we see Bojack. Now, I think that we don't need to argue that Vegex is a good deck, that it's maybe not the best deck, but it's not quite the worst deck. It falls somewhere in between. I think that makes sense, but there's a Bojack here that is above Invoker, and I'm quite curious why.
Okay, so first off, let's talk about how we can put Bojack above Invoker. Reason being is that this was the action. I will quote our conversation. If you sit across Invoker and it's Sublett or Legends, it's tier 1. Anyone else, tier 2.
That is fair.
So that was literally our parameter. We said, okay, if you go into a room, are you expecting every Invoker player to be Legends or Sublett? No, it's tier 2. Do you sit across Legends or Sublett? Pack up your cards, it's tier 1. Like, that's legitimately how we looked at it. That's why we put it at tier 2. Because I'm not judging a deck being so good because 2 players make the deck very well known. We even Dahan did very well with it. But like, unless you're sitting across a very seasoned player that has really tested the inner machinations of Invoker, it is a tier 2 deck. Bojack, I think Bojack is another deck where it's very niche, it's very cool, has a very cool play design. Dahan's been testing this deck religiously and really working on it. I think that the energy interactions have been really cool, especially since we got the updated ruling. And being able to spin the piano, as we did mention here, is a very strong point against King Piccolo because it does slow down the game plan a little bit. I think it can defend against Mecha and Dark Broly just enough to kind of put it on its heels, but being able to kind of put a little pressure. But overall, I think the deck is one of those decks where it can put up a fight against tier 1, it can win against tier 2. It's like stuck in that little like gray area middle land.
So, fair enough. The Invoker was just a joke. You didn't actually have to justify.
No. That's legitimately how we justified Invoker. We that's literally how we did it, and we will stick by that.
No. Everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
There's no question there. But Chesko wanted to argue that piano comment that you made.
I hate Bojack. It's okay. For the record, I'm not saying the deck is bad. I'm just saying I hate it. Everything about that deck, I super dislike. Every single deck just kills piano. You're gonna have to come with a little bit of a stronger argument to say that the deck can beat King Piccolo, because literally every deck always piano draws one card and then dies. Like, it's a constant problem in every single matchup, and like, the fact that Bojack can do it doesn't make the deck special. I just don't like the deck. That's just me being a hater. Again, I'm not saying the deck is bad. I'm sure the deck will top. I just don't like it.
No, that's completely fine. And a lot of the reason, like, if you were to look at another reason why we put it in tier 1.5 is that because we think that its tempo game plan is very, very strong. That's legitimately one of the biggest reasons why we think that its tempo game plan is very strong and being able to manipulate tempo. That's why we think that it can kind of put tier 1 on its heels, not like overrun them, but then tier 2 it can really kind of put in like a halt in their plans. That's why we saw it around tier 1.5. Bojack is one of those decks where like Dahan believes that it is very well. I saw it a little differently. I see Bojack as a deck that could fluctuate down. He sees it that it is a good contender, and I'm actually very excited to see how it does progress in the meta.
So I'm only going to chime in. I know it's a rogue deck, but if you play against Mecha Kabura, you're going to have a terrible time. It is the worst game you will ever play.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Yeah, your cards never hit the battlefield. They just all get taken. Your opponent negates your leader swing, so you can never play something on your turn, and then they just abuse their leader ability. It's terrible.
We'll get into Mecha Kabura as we get down, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like that tier 1.5 land.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say one thing about your statement in regards to decks that can kind of put tier 1 decks on their heels, sort of like the anti-meta thing. There are so many decks you can throw in this deck kind of counters this tier 1 strategy that it's just kind of like there's so many decks that can go in that tier 1.5 category or anti-meta, whichever one you prefer to call it. In my opinion, that is like It's a deck I play, so I'm gonna be biased in this sense and give an example through my
Don't
interactions.
do it, bro. Please
Um,
don't do it.
Don't do it,
it's
Trey.
cool. It's just it doesn't even have to be cooler. It's just the red blue cooler card itself kind of destroys or like wrecks a lot of these tier 1 strategies. It doesn't even have to be the cooler leader, like if that makes sense. Just that card in general is super good against those decks. So if your deck can abuse that card, it would probably have a good like 50-50 matchup against most of the decks in the top tier category currently.
I see Bojack as a deck that can move up if aggro is the dominant tier 1 and move down if mid-range control is the dominant tier 1. Because Bojack struggles with drawing and it struggles with not getting a combo step. And so that kind of becomes what it is, right? If we see these hyper control decks tier 1, then Bojack is not on the table at all.
No, it's literally the opposite. Bojack is horrible against aggro.
Well, it seems like it's absolutely dreadful against control. So it's just a bad deck.
That's what honestly, that is what I think. Bojack sucks against aggro because everything costs energy, and you can't play like the two best blue cards being D Magic and Godseal. You can play D Magic. I know. I get it. You can play it, but like your leader has negative synergy with D Magic and Godseal. Like it just Bojack's not good against aggro and it's not good against control. So what does that leave it? You know what I mean?
Okay, I do believe that Bojack is probably the most contentious deck listed here, but we do need to move on for time's sake.
Gotcha.
And so we enter the tier 2. So tier 2, when I think of a tier 2 deck, kind of like what Chesko was saying, I'm thinking of a deck that's going to top, right? A tier 1 deck is a deck that's going to win, a tier 2 deck is a deck that's going to top. And so when I look at your tier 2 list, I see a lot of decks that I wouldn't necessarily say are going to top. They're decks that I would put in your rogue category, which are decks that you might see 1 out of every 3 events. So for example, here we have Invoker, that makes sense. Baby, that makes sense. Launch, that kind of makes sense. Son Goku and Vegeta Xeno, I think that's more of a rogue deck. Bulma, I think that's more of a rogue deck. And Sin Shinran, you'll have to be more specific as to which variety it
That's
is.
almost a Washburn special. You got Sublett. I know you don't know this.
There's always bias, but before we continue with this, I'm just curious as to when you sat down for these tier 2 decks, did you pull these names out of a hat? But what made you select these names as tier 2 decks? What made Bulma, for example? What made Baby?
Travis
What made
Washburn.
jump out to you? That's a fair answer. But what made it jump out to you? Like, would you say that Bulma is an inbred decision, or would you say that it is an obvious decision? Just not, and don't just use Bulma as an example.
No.
obviously.
I'm gonna kind of lightning round this because tier 2 is easier for me to kind of go through because tier 1 and 1.5 I'll add a lot more kind of in-depth analysis on. Tier 2, I'm just gonna give you bullet points, and I think that's the best way to handle it. As you mentioned, Invoker, Baby, Launch, and Sin Shenron. I actually think that the aggro Sin Shenron is still a decent one, being able to pump sell, and I think control is still there too. I think Sin Shenron is just a very good synergistic deck. That's another, like, legitimately, that's another a pet deck of mine is Sin Shenron. I love this. I love the deck completely. I love playing the control. I love playing the aggro. It doesn't matter to me. That's a deck that I always test. I think its game plan is it's basically just Dragon Apes. Being able to restand everything and be able to have so much value within that character name is fantastic. But I think it did drop from like a 1.5 to a 2 because the format is developing more. Invoker, if it's not you or Legend Sublett, it's tier 2.
I don't like when you say that. Because Rios is the first person to pick that deck up, and if he ever picks that deck up again, I promise you'll win an event, bro.
So if Rios takes that deck up again, sure. Legends, Sublett, Rios. Rios is just a god. We're gonna put it that way. That's all I'm saying.
If the best player in the game picks up a deck, he'll win with it. That's not
right.
That's not okay. So Dahan also top. Here's the thing, right? Dahan topped with Invoker,
top 4.
but Dahan is not an Invoker player.
Yeah.
No.
You see what I'm saying? That's all. Is it?
So with this being said, though, so right, if Legends is one of the best Invoker players, I was able to beat Legends in an event. Does that, by the transitive property, make me one of the best Invoker players?
Yep, pick it up. You're good. Pick it up.
This is
Fine.
not Highlander.
Send it.
This is
Send
not
it.
high
Send it.
on your-
Send it. Put it on the table. Swing the leader. Send.
You
Anywho,
beat him. You beat him in the mirror match.
No, I was playing Mecha.
No,
Which
Then
he
why does
doesn't-
that make you a good poker player?
But transitive property. I stole it from him.
that's the joke, JPEG.
High on your-
Baby is one of those decks that I think is tier 2 because I honestly think Baby's like, all right, draw my cards, negate, okay, negate, okay, negate. I think it's a low ceiling type of deck. Obviously it has lines, so Giancarlo doesn't, throw a chair through the screen at me. I think it actually
love
has.
Baby.
I think it has lines, and I think it can do it well. But if you look at classifying it as a good deck, its consistency is insane. Being able to constantly get negates, and consistency as in also playing with energy manipulation because that field spell is insane for that deck. I think it has a low skill ceiling, so anyone can pick it up and negate an attack. It's not explosive at all. Like game 1 goes 55 minutes. It has so the matchups and counters. This is where we started getting into the contention. I think it has good playability.
Yeah.
It's just a good blue control deck. But counter to matchups is that it's a flip flop. Like it has good matchups, and it just loses super hard. It's very wishy washy. So it just ends up more in a tier 2 concept to me. I see as the format develops, I see Baby and Bojack kind of maybe switching places. But honestly, Baby is one of those decks where if I had the money, I'd be picking it up because I could just sit there and negate all the attacks and then, okay, cool, I played Janemba. I could sit there for 55 minutes and think of something else while I'm just negating your attacks. I was thinking of probably what I'm getting for food. Like, that's what it's like. Like,
Yeah. Everything you said, real quick. Everything you said about Baby is correct. It's a tier 2 deck. Baby is the most heavily sideboarded against deck, but it's one of the most least played decks. You look at everybody's, because people hate Baby. People hate playing against Baby. Every single sideboard you see, people are like, oh yeah, this is for Baby / Invoker. So like, the problem with Baby is that like, you're going to win game 1, and then people side in 5 cards against you, and you're like, oh, that sucks. And it's everyone's sideboard's a bunch of cards for Baby.
Like the last tournament I went to, I just planned to take the L. Like it is what it is. Like
Well,
yeah.
but I'm telling you, dog. Baby is like, you look at 90% of sideboards, people got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards for Baby / Invoker. 100% they do. 100%.
So I'll just continue to kind of speed round this.
Yeah, go for it.
I think Launch is just still a very cool deck that's going to continue topping. I think the game plan is very cool, being able to play that red green kind of like alliance aggro.
Launch is dead.
Listen. Robbie gave me hope, and that's why I'm looking at it from like the last type of playing. I think that's going to do well. It's a deck that I think may leave as the format develops. Bulma, Travis Washburn.
Right.
Like, let's be honest here. The guy that he's been playing, he has very good builds. He's been playing it very well. In the hands of a good player, I think Bulma can top. Bulma can show up because being able to have that constant defensive synergy and being able to have blockers and everything, and a lot of some of like the random techs you can do, I think it is just a cool deck that did come out of a little bit of a favored part of the team, which I don't mind. Like, look, Travis is an insane red player. If I want to play against anything red, I want to play test against him. Son Goku and Vegeta Zeno. I think this is literally because we think the Gogeta Zeno card is that good. We think it's insane. I think it gives the deck a little bit. But if I want to play a black deck with the Gogeta promo, I'm gonna play Vegex, or I'm most likely just play Dark Broly. If I want to play Son Goku and Vegeta Zeno and go that route again, then sure, I'll do it. But if I just want to play that promo, I'm gonna play Dark Broly.
Does anybody have any points to bring up about the tier 2 / random rogue Bulma deck list?
Yeah, I do. So Bulma, it's literally the same as Invoker logic. Travis Washburn, Bulma, tier 2, random Bulma guy, tier 5. It's the same logic. I agree with that logic.
I'm gonna give respect to Jerry too. Jerry Bishop is a great Bulma player.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, of course. I don't like Son Goku, Zeno, and Vegeta. The deck literally just shouldn't exist. No one should play that deck. Just play Vegex.
Where's Vegex? I couldn't afford to start the deck Vegex, so I decided.
Exactly. Launch is dead, and Sin Shinron is a best of 1 deck. Yeah, I agree with everything else is right. That's it.
And then like I know we want to get into it, and I want to highlight on tier 3. Let me preface this. The reason why we put tier 3 is legitimately because like, if we were to look at this, 1.52 in Rogue were kind of what we really focus on. 3 were decks that like we honestly were like, okay, sure, these are like just a very small sample size based on the concept of if you go, you'll see it in Swiss.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I was about to get into as we come into tier imaginary.
Yeah,
Which
like
is what
this
tier three
is
is. Tier
where
is just
if you tell me your deck has been undefeated at your 2-round locals, I'm putting it in tier 3.
yeah. So tier three doesn't actually exist for anybody watching.
Correct. Yeah.
Just in general, there is no such thing as a tier three, or it's tier imaginary, it's tier appeasement. Tier three is just where everything else goes.
To die. Sorry, what?
Exactly. I'm the one-liner, man. You gotta stop stealing. Yes, no, it's where everything goes to
Yes.
die. You can literally put any deck in this list, and as evidence for my statement, you have put Android 16 in this list. Okay, everything else fits in this list, so we don't really.
Android 16 is cute. It's cool. It's
You
interesting.
have
I think it's cool.
green Android 16.
All right, this is the point of the tier 3 doesn't exist.
Green.
Yeah. Okay, but realistically, Android 16 has.
Frieza was originally on the
Hold
tier
on,
3,
hold
and
on,
we
hold
took
on,
it out.
hold on. Android
It's
16
so
actually
bad
has
you
topped the
didn't even go
regionals. Hold on, Android 16
16 is
has
good.
topped the regionals. The thing is, tier 3 is literally 100 decks, and we can argue like it's literally every other deck in the game. Nick Larson topped with TN, right? TN sucks, bro. Like, who cares? Reboot Gohan probably should not be in tier 3. I think Reboot Gohan's the only deck that could actually escape the hellhole that is tier 3.
That's why I think as
2.5.
we go into this format a little more, I think Reboot leaves and goes into tier 2. Just saying, when we were looking this from the beginning of the meta, Reboot was in 3. I think it goes to 2. Reboot is just a busted leader. That's why the deck's good.
All right, so
Talk about brain dead. You just turn everything sideways. One reboot literally always tops everything. There's always one reboot in there. So like it's a whatever deck. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, big attack goes smash. Sometimes
Yeah.
it wins.
It's a real deck.
Okay, so
Deck's great. I'm great.
Yeah.
So we don't need to talk about tier 3.
No, I want to talk about Rogue.
Really is no reason. Rogue is where we go next. So Rogue, I'm curious of your definition of a Rogue. When I say this is a Rogue deck,
These are rogue decks. These are rouge decks.
they're Rouge
These are
decks.
Rouge decks because these decks are out for tier 1 to see red. I'm saying it now.
Right, so when I think of a Rogue deck, I'm thinking of Burning Abyss in the middle of Necros format. I'm thinking of a deck.
That game.
Yeah, I did too. I was also the Burning Abyss player. I think of a deck that like U7 Frieza. Anytime I sat down in a tournament for a year and a half, it's a deck that this is just somebody's baby, and it's like they're not coming off of it. Butters and Clash Coup. Excuse me.
Say it out loud, like Butters and Clash Coup.
Yeah, so a Rogue deck, it's not the deck you're afraid of, it's the dude who's got their hands on the deck that you're afraid of. And so when I see a Rogue deck, it's like I give no weight to the deck itself, I give more weight to the players that are known for the decks themselves. And so when we look at your list here, we see like Soul Striker, so we're thinking like Frisco and Jose. We're thinking that's what I'm thinking of when I see that. When I see Majin Vegeta, I'm thinking of best of one and then moving on with my day. When I see Mecha Kabura Wish, I just laugh.
Okay, so hear me out. With Majin Vegeta, I think it's a deck that's very exclusive game 1. I think it's a deck that people really are like, oh, people only played in best of 1. No one's gonna bring it to a best of 3. And then you have teammates like Jason, who is actually very versed in the deck. Like if honestly, when he sits down and we test and he breaks up Majin Vegeta, I gotta play like knowing, okay, this is his child. Like you said, like when you were playing U7, Majin Vegeta is a deck where game 1 you can steal it, game 2 and 3 you have to just have the nuts because people are just gonna be like, oh, it's Majin Vegeta, cool, I can just do this. Like it's just one of those decks. Mecha Gabora has so much potential. I think against Dark Broly it doesn't sail well. I think it will struggle. Oh, you will have your time and I will explain. Like I think it's harder for Dark Broly playing against Mecha Gabora because it's like their drop is gone.
Cares. Literally, who cares? I play a 1-drop that summons a 6-drop from my deck.
Exactly. And
Literally cares.
It makes nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing. And your 8-drop, when you finally play, you just supreme kind of take your guys back and clap it.
I think Mecha Gabora is just Mecha Gabora is a very, very interesting and cool deck concept. I think it's very Rouge. All right, it's very Rouge. It's very Rouge.
Mecha Gabora is set 10 Sin Shenron. It was a deck that was played but did not have its full support. So when we get set 15 or 14, whatever the next set is, and there's 20 more Makekabura cards, then you're like, oh damn, now we gotta pay attention to Makekabura. It's just set 10 Sin Shinron. It's not the complete deck until next set. That's it.
Exactly. The only thing you can ever
It
do
can
is
be
Mecha
Bojack
Cabrera. Yeah.
apparently.
Me playing Dark Brother, the only thing you can ever do is Mecha Cabrera that'll have me like, oh snap, I actually got to think now, is you dropping Wish Granter and swinging 3 times with triple strike, triple attack. And I'm like, oh, yeah, now I have to play
You're
the game.
telling me that even playing Dark Broly, you don't think while playing the deck it's that easy?
You don't do anything.
Yeah,
It doesn't do anything.
You literally
I
don't
literally
do anything.
out-comboed.
Yeah,
I literally out-comboed the Wish Granter.
exactly.
Like, I was playing against Makekabura. He Wish Granter, triple strike. I literally just out-comboed it.
That's
I
your
didn't die.
best play. Yeah,
That
exactly.
just sucks.
That's literally your
That
best
just
play.
sucks.
Warping the drop doesn't do anything. We could just play one from 2 from hand. Like, okay, cool. We'll warp your salsa. Now you're not drawing cards. We'll starve you out. You have no battle cards. Hit you with the 7 drop. But this is not the time for that. Go ahead, continue.
No. Again, that's why Dark Broly is tier 1 and Mechikabura is Rouge.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
So I think that we've actually sat here and we've discussed this tier list, in pretty great detail. The tier 1, the tier 1.5, the tier 2, the tier imaginary, and of course the Rouge 1 decks.
Well, hold on one second, because I think people are undervaluing blue decks heading into this format. I think people are sleeping on blue 100%, and this happens a lot. The blue has a lot of really good cards. They got a new unison that does some things. They have 2 new unisons because Pan is also a very strong unison in the game as well, to helping the decks get to later games in the tournament. So I think overlooking blue is just a mistake as you head into approaching this format. And then I know everyone's going to think that it's a joke, but I actually think that Mechikabura, I think it's a good deck. I think if Dark Broly inherently, it's not a good matchup because your opponent's playing 6 drops. Your leader ability only steals 4 drops or less. So it's like, okay, well, you made half of my leader worthless, which kind of sucks. So it's like, I don't see that being a good matchup. What I do see in better matchups are things like Mecha Frieza, things like King Piccolo, things like Launch. Any deck that has to commit to the board makes the deck feel better. Do I think the deck's tier 1 or even tier 2? Probably not. It definitely belongs in the Rouge category. But I do think that some blue decks could probably be in the tier 2.
There are Baby and Invoker in tier 2.
Yeah, to point on what you said, just because I say you don't have a good Dark Broly matchup, Mecha Bear I do believe is good. A lot of people think it sucks after this past weekend. The deck is still fire. Don't get it twisted. It's just the matchup that you think you have the most, it's not the matchup. And the only thing for blue, I think that Coombs was trying to say, I think he's trying to say we're all underestimating the blue unison. That's it. The blue unison is good. I'm not gonna lie. That guy, he's got to.
No. I agree. I think it is good.
Yeah.
Mechikabura is a deck that I have been personally really, really testing, tweaking, and really working on certain ratios and everything. And I have literally spent most of my set 13 testing playing Mechikabura. I'm really trying to work. I'll pick up Vajack's Mecha Frieza. I'll play those decks to just understand them, and I have Mecha Frieza as a deck that I will play to a tournament because I really do like playing that deck. But Mechikabura right now is like my child. I'm really developing a lot of time into this deck because I can see where Coombs is coming from.
So you've spent most of your testing time on Mechikabura. How does it feel to have wasted so much time?
As much as it feels to waste an entire match playing against you, actually thinking you're gonna win.
Damn.
Me specifically with Invoker?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's game, Reed. No. But Mecha Bear, it is fire. I'm not gonna sit here and say it's not good. Mecha Bear, I can see it in the finals event, but it just you don't have an auto win against Dark Bro. That's all I'm gonna say because a lot of people seem to think that. I don't know where they get that from.
I think it's an auto win. I just think you can. I think you could just like play catch up a little bit. It's not an auto win. Like it's not. Like I could just be playing against Dark Broly players who are just like smashing their headboard against the keyboard. Like I don't care. But like when I generally test, like I feel actually very confident against Mecha. Feel very confident against King Piccolo. I'm decent against King Cold. Launch. I haven't played against Launch. I'm probably gonna test that a little more. When I played against Sin Shenron, cool, gone. I just started taking things and they couldn't really bring out Celzino, which was their finisher. Like, there were a lot of things that I was able to do and really manipulate the board and just being like, okay, cool, I have skillless cards. By the way, I play the one drop Kid Coup and I play a ball. Oh, look at that combo power. Like
Kekabura will literally never beat King Piccolo. You're out of your damn mind. There's
Did I
literally
say-
no
wait,
way
hold-
that deck
hold-
can beat King Piccolo.
So did I say that I'm beating King Piccolo 100% of the time? No, I'm not. I'm saying that the deck can go up against it.
I think you
Sure.
can. Yeah, I think you can.
Absolutely.
I never said.
I think you can. I think
I'm literally.
you're playing cheap 15Ks to be able to attack
Mekabura
the
is
units.
good, bro. Like it's just
I
not.
am literally never losing to that deck with King Piccolo.
You will.
I will play you.
You
I will
will.
play you as many games as you want, and I will drop a couple. Sure, happens. Never losing to that deck ever.
All you need is one.
Exactly. Don't say never. That's terrible. Just
100%.
say
100% never.
you'll have a favorable percentage, and that's it.
It's an 80-20 matchup.
80-20.
So
That's not 100% never.
Nah, yeah, but
Okay,
Mekabura is
this
probably
is
like the most
devolved.
overlooked.
It works 100% of the time, 70% of the time. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's nice.
60% of the time, it works.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Mekabura is really
right.
overlooked,
It's
man.
not explanation.
People are looking down on it, but it's really good deck, man. Like, don't sleep on it. The one thing I like about it most is the amount of boss monsters you can just have in your main board, and you can just have X card for blue, X card for red. You can just literally tech it. And whichever one you see opening hand is the one you keep, man. Like, Mekabura is a really good deck. Don't sleep on it. You will get clapped, and it's not going to be fun.
All right, so
yeah.
let's get off of Meki Kabura's proverbial junk and move
Dragon
forward
Balls.
to wrapping up our discussion of this. Yes, let's get off of his Dragon Balls and Power Pole
Yep.
and move forward with finishing it up. So we've thoroughly discussed this tier list that you and your team created, Cam. Thank you very much for the in-depth discussion that you've given on this and for being so understanding of people telling you that they disagree and definitely respectful and not at all saying just you're wrong terms, Chesko.
Look, hey, look, if you come up to me and you have an opinion and you want to actually give me evidence and you support your opinion, I will sit there and have a conversation with you and love it. But then what happens is that the people, like, half the time, I'll be honest, half the comments, 75%, 80, about 90% of the comments that I put in the discussion group, I genuinely just didn't pay attention to because it was just a blank statement without any backup. It was like, this list sucks. And I'm like, all right, I don't care about that. But then, for example, someone was like, I think this is incorrect because this is this, and here's why. I'm going to take my time, read that, and then think of a response or bring that back and be like, all right, so how, like, that's decent. Like, let me see from their point of view. Like, if you give me a thought-provoking response, I'm going to give you a thought-provoking answer. If you give me verbal diarrhea, I'm not going to listen to you.
Exactly.
That's fair.
Well said.
Well, thank you very much for this very in-depth discussion, and hopefully you had a good time with it too.
Absolutely. I love being on podcasts and talking. It's my favorite thing to do.
It is.
And Eddie, you want to take us home?
Yeah, man. So closing comment. Oh, we don't have that many comments. I guess we were just listening. We only had the. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, like I said, guys, do not get offended if you didn't see your deck. If you see a deck that you don't think should be tier 1, like King Cole, shouldn't be in there, don't get offended, guys. Like, literally, this is all just people's opinions. It's subjective. It's not the rule of the land where, hey, if you're playing these decks, or if you're playing against these decks, you're going to lose. Like, no, it's just not that. With that being said, thank you guys for joining. You guys have any closing comments for them?
Yeah. I think if you want to look at the data from over this past weekend and then you want to look at this tier list, I think if you have to look at the decks that are currently defining the format right now, that are setting the rules of how you're having to approach it, it seems to be Mecha Frieza and King Vegeta this week were the big winners. So when you're going into building for your tournaments coming up, whether they're best of 3 events, you're going to want to make sure that you're selecting a deck that either has a solid matchup or you're going to want to tune those decks to have a better matchup against one or the other, and then also adjusting the other decks in the format. But I think those are the 2 decks that came out ahead. But I do think that the black decks, once people have access to the promos, will start to make a bigger impact as well. But those are the 2 decks I have my eye on this weekend.
And I like to focus and say I do appreciate you guys bringing me on and giving me the opportunity to discuss this, really have kind of a nice conversation about this because, it's something that we did put a lot of time and effort into. and we ended up being like, hey, look, if people can have, we were surprised to see that a lot of people actually kind of agreed with a good chunk of this list. And for anyone listening, and because I believe you put these up on YouTube, for as long as people listen afterwards, if you were to look at this with no in-depth analysis whatsoever, if you go into event, expect to see tier 1, 1.5, and 2. Sideboard for tier 1, but make sure your sideboard cards can be applicable towards 1.5 and 2. That's how I would look at it.
My closing comment is just looking forward. We have this best of 1 regional coming up on Saturday. And it's important to understand the things that we've been discussing here in this tier list are best of 3. That was our frame of reference. And so you want to take kind of the lessons you've learned here and apply that to your best of 1 deck. But you kind of want to use this as your flex slots in your deck, right? Every deck has about 2 to 4 slots where you can kind of just fit your side deck cards in for best of 1. Those 2 to 4 slots probably need to address the decks that you see on this tier 1 list, especially the Frieza and the King Piccolo and King Vegeta. And going into best of 1, you can expect to see the things in tier imaginary. So just keep that in mind as we move into the large premier event of this weekend, that it is a best of 1 and our discussion is focused on best of 3. So you do need to make adjustments to what you have heard tonight based on your own judgment and based on your own opinion, so that your deck will function properly in a best of 1 environment and not the best of 3 environment that we were discussing.
Good point. I just want to say I love Cam. I'm glad he came on tonight. It's just good to hang out, even if it's in a more public forum. I like doing these team talks because I just get to hang out with people I like, my boys. We're just chilling and talking about Dragon Ball, man. I like it a lot. I love doing these team talks.
Okay.
I'll
add one note. I know a lot of you guys were asking for that Make Your Bear deck list. I will be recording it tomorrow at Locals. I'll try to make it. I'll probably be around late, but yeah. So I'll have it on the channel. I'll try to have it by Friday or Saturday. The guy who got top 8 at it, Nicholas Scanner, shout out to him. He reached out to me, so yeah, I'll have that for you
I'm
guys.
keeping mine locked up for a little bit more before I feel like talking about it. But Eddie, if you want to see it and give me some suggestions, I'll shoot you the list.
Yeah,
Trey, do you have any closing comments?
Make Your Bear, I
Yes.
definitely see. Very, very Go ahead, Trey. I'll talk to you offline.
Mine has to stay locked up a little bit more.
It's a good deck, bro. Like,
Yeah.
you're laughing, Giancarlo. The deck is. I can see the deck winning an event. I'm not trolling you. 100%. The day Make Your Bear wins an event, I'm not gonna be surprised. The deck is solid. The only negative thing I said about it was that it cannot beat Dark Early. That's it. But go ahead, Trey.
The one thing I will note is for the people that hate on the tier list and just the way it looks, we did bring up a little bit about it, is the fact that there are probably currently, this is not an exaggeration, at least 20 decks that are playable or more, probably more. At Locals, sometimes we have 16 players with 16 different decks, and everyone has a good time. And so if your deck's not pictured or if they're in the conversation at all, it's probably still playable.
Very true. None of Trey's decks are pictured, so I can understand why
cooler,
you would say that.
Except if it's Cooler or Icarus.
Hey, I will literally gladly hand L's out with that deck.
And with that being said, we will see you guys next time.
All right. Eddie, hang out for a second after.